So, while we are celebrating the release of Arcane, we can see all the different games coming out with their own collaborations with it. And while some of them are getting praised, while acknowledging higher prices, other games are leaving people confused, while also acknowledging higher prices. And unfortunately, this is what just happened to TFT. Despite the fact that TFT might be pushing out their best set yet, it does have one flaw that made everyone pause for a bit. And as always, it just so happens to be that it is connected to cosmetics. So without further ado, first let's have a look at what is even happening in the new set, and then let's have a look at why some people are upset. So last week, with the release of Act 1 of Season 2, the new TFT set based on Arcane was put onto PBE. But thankfully, we don't have to dig through everything, because at the same time, we also got a dev video that just picked out the most important parts. So again, the theme of the new set is Arcane. And so of course it makes sense that among the new traits we would have stuff like Chem-Barons, who are all about getting illegal items from the black market. But what's cool is that some of these traits are full of new, unique models that are exclusive to TFT. And here, pretty much every important Baron from Act 1 made it in. So this includes Silco, Smeech, Rani, but also some very interesting other ones. Now, before I mention who these are, there is something we have to mention. While TFT pays attention to canon stories and relations, sometimes they have to fill out their roster with champions that don't exactly make sense. That's simply done because they need someone there. An example of this would be Echo in the past. In one of the previous sets, he was put in as a Piltover champion, even though he's not. But that's just because of gameplay purposes. They needed a unit that would connect Piltover and Zone. So here, to fill out the Chem-Baron roster, they most likely just got creative with some of the units that could be possible here, but there is the extremely tiny chance they might be teasing what's gonna happen in Arcane. Because next, Savika is put in as a Chem-Baron. Now sure, it would be awesome if Savika became a Chem-Baron. She would be the one following the steps of someone like Silco, but she's not exactly the type that would probably fit that role. However, then, there is also Singed. And to be honest, Singed would be an amazing Chem-Baron. And now, even though this is most likely done here just for gameplay, I hope he's gonna become one. So yeah, just take all of these with a pinch of salt because of gameplay. And yeah, funnily enough, Savika does have her own Gamba mechanic, reflecting her fight with Smeech. Anyway, next we also have Enforcers. Here, it is really cool to see someone like Camille. Even though her storyline is likely happening sometimes after Arcane is done, it is cool to see her besides the Enforcers, just like what we've seen in the cinematic. Also, a really cool creative choice here is Pool's Fire Twisted Fate. I have to admit, that one really does look like an Enforcer. But even here, we are getting more exclusive units. We got Fishy Boy, Loris, and Maddie, all of whom we know as Caitlyn's squad. And this is why this entire set is kinda breaking expectations. Sure, we would expect some new units as like side characters or just remodels of already existing skeletons, but here it seems like we are getting so many new models that were just made from ground up, in the exact same way someone like Kabuko was made. So here we can see that TFT is really kicking off as a completely separate game from League. In fact, League is now the game that is now taking some of the new models from TFT and they are using them as cameo on the Bridge of Progress. Anyway, next we have Conqueror, which I'm not sure why that trait is not just called Noxus. Because all the units here are Noxian, including Mordekaiser. Yes, don't forget that Mordekaiser is originally a Noxian too. And I like that they even included Rel, who is pretty much a living weapon that went rogue and who was originally trained by the Black Rose. And speaking of canonical ties, Mordekaiser has one more layer, because technically this could be considered his canonical appearance. Because from LeBlanc's story we learned that Mordekaiser's armor is just down there below Noxus suspended in the air. And right below that floating armor you have the window into his death realm, which is where he was banished essentially. And in the story, it was specifically mentioned that his armor, without the soul, is just a dark pile of metal. And it was described in a very similar way to what we can see here. I don't know if that was intentional, it probably wasn't, they just needed a red color to fit the Noxian trait. But I like to think it was done on purpose. Anyway, continuing the path of canonical traits, the Emissary trait is really clever. Because it takes different champions who are from totally different regions, and it is using them as emissaries. We have Tristana, who is here to speak for Bandle City. Garen is here to represent Demacia. Nami is obviously representing her Vastayan tribe that is somewhere around Targon. And Ambessa speaks for Noxus. And then we get into a really hilarious trait. Rebels. See here, you may notice that all of these units have blue hair. And that is because these are representing all of Jinx's followers. All of those were originally teased in the trailers for Arcane. But some people noticed that yes, Set is here too, and he might be playing the role of Chad from Convergence. And yes, of course, their 5 cost is Jinx. Connected to this, there is also a new kind of augments. They call it the relationship augments, which essentially gives you a whole new trait that would be otherwise unavailable. And it is based on pairing 2 champions together. So you might have something like Heimerdinger and Echo, Jinx and Vi, or Vi and Echo. And speaking of Echo, here we get more unique models, because Firelights also became their own trait. And yes, it is awesome to see Zeri here, even though, just like Camille, Zeri's story also happens a bit into the future. But also, here we got another new unit, Scar. So again, this set is just getting more and more value. Then there is the Academy trait, which is basically your scientific trait. And then we get 3 more new units as part of the family trait. Here we are going into the past and we are getting Powder, Vi, and Vander. So really, this set is just going through the roof with creating new units. But I have to say, some of this is definitely possible because of some clever engineering. Because there is some really clever reuse of animations. For example, let's have a look at Vander. Have we seen this animation somewhere else? Well, yes, that is Cassante. So while Vander's idle animation is completely new, he is using Cassante's combat animations. For Vi, I thought they would be using the Lee Sin ASU animations, but honestly, these look totally new, so I'm not really sure what these are. Unless it is specifically the boxing skin, because that one does have unique animations. And there is also Powder, who is using Annie's auto attack animations. So, some of these new units have some really clever spaghetti behind them. But that is pretty much all the most important traits covered, which means let's quickly have a look at the new mechanic of the set. It is called the Anomaly, and it allows you to transform a unit of your choosing. You roll your gold for a modification, and then you throw your unit into the Anomaly and you watch them evolve. Sometimes it may be a buff for the unit, but sometimes the Anomaly destroys the unit and maybe turns their traits into special items. Regardless, thankfully, because this is a big decision, it only happens near the end game. So nope, it will not make you force a comp early on. But that's pretty much it for the gameplay, so now let's dive into the other half of this update. The half that got some people upset, other people disappointed, and the rest is kinda fine with it. And that is the new kind of cosmetic that is called Unbound. At first sight, some people may say that they are just reusing champions from League of Legends as playable tacticians. But saying that would be a bit dishonest, because in reality, this is a new model. Not only that, in fact, it is a significant upgrade over what we have in League. For example, this new version actually has facial skeleton, which means she can actually move her face. On top of that, it is filled with cool new animations, but on the other side, your average player will not notice that. Even though these are 2 separate models, they are way too close to each other. And so to them, it is just Riot being lazy and reusing a model from League. Even though, under the hood, that is not what's happening. Now, the logic behind this skin makes sense. The team wants to take champions from the canon universe, and they want to present them in their most iconic moments. And that includes their finishers. which is why Jinx's finisher is simply the finale of Season 1. Now, these new Unbound tacticians are focused on all the people who don't like chibi champions and they would rather have something more serious. And I'll be honest, I am the targeted audience here. You may know, I hate chibis. I think it has to be just the small bodies and their freaky head. So when it comes to little legends, I am usually using something like a Talker, the legendary Baron, or even Blitzcrank or Yumi. Because while those are chibi champions, you can't actually tell they are chibis. I like using more realistic kind of characters. So again, I am absolutely the targeted audience here. And still, I absolutely agree with the big feedback that Riot got. This tactician doesn't fit TFT's art style. I like what they are going for. I like the canonical take. I like the very serious presentation. But it goes so far beyond the expectations of TFT that it no longer feels like TFT. Or actually, it does feel like TFT. But that's because the tactician actually looks like a unit that should be standing on the board. Which could be a problem, especially for new players. If you are not sure what is even part of combat, yes, you might be able to confuse this skin for a unit. Though there, I would say, in real gameplay, yes, all tacticians have the names and the health bars above them. So from that regard, I don't think that is gonna be as big of an issue. Although, some sets do have special mechanics. For example, the Eldritch Summoning is a good example of this, where you have special units that wait outside of the arena before they join the fight. And here, the Jinx definitely looks like that. Which means this skin might cause some trouble with readability. Now, once again, I am absolutely the targeted audience here. So, here is my feedback specifically. I would say, keep doing what you are trying to do, which is to land on more serious tacticians. However, do it with the TFT style. This might sound hilarious, but unironically, I do believe the style of units in something like Warcraft Rumble would fit TFT. And I don't mean the rendering, which makes all the units look like it's plastic toys. Specifically, I am talking about the proportions and the stylization. This might make the tacticians look a bit more serious while keeping the TFT style. And that is while not giving them oversized heads. So if you gave me Jinx in a style similar to that, I would actually like it. But unfortunately, that is not quite the only issue with this skin. Because then there is also the price. Now at this point, people kinda know that chibis and their special versions are more pricey. So to a certain degree, people are used to it. But over the past year, TFT has been kind of falling into the hole where everything in TFT just seems more pricey now. Of course, this is countered by the fact that you can get some smaller cosmetics for free just by playing. But when it comes to direct purchases, which is when people just want to spend money, your option is get the 2 new little legends that are present in every set. And yes, I will say, they look awesome. However, if you don't like that style specifically, you're kinda screwed. Next, there is also the new sprite available every set. But outside of that, if you are looking for something interesting that stands out at least a little bit beyond the normal tacticians, you can't really get anything, which, yes, I do believe that is by design. I guess they do want you to pay if you wanna get something more special. But recently, it really started feeling like all the cool things are simply just more expensive, and they are not accessible by the most common players. Which again, this wouldn't be an issue if there was a good balance between expensive and not so expensive cosmetics. But now, it does feel like we are getting showered with new chibis as well as now the new Unbound skins, which are always somewhere between $100 and $150. I mean, right after the Unbound Jinx skin, they did announce yet another chibi skin for NE2. And the rest kinda has to get the 2 new little legends, and that's kinda it. And that's not even talking about boards, which are either kinda expensive, which makes sense, the boards are massive and a lot of effort goes into them, or you kinda just have to get the pass. There are no other ways to get new boards. Everything else is available, but it's never new stuff. It is all part of the rotating store. And yes, here I also want to mention that the new board this time around looks amazing. It is the last drop and it actually evolves over time. It is expensive though. Then again, remember that TFT is a free-to-play game. And after quite a bit of struggle with monetization, it is the new kind of monetization that is responsible for the team to be able to do all the crazy stuff they do with gameplay. So this topic is not exactly one-sided. Now normally, if I wanted to dive into the community's opinion on this, we would have to go to Reddit, where things are always getting spicy. But somehow, this time the spicy opinions are just there on YouTube too. In my opinion, Unbound looks cool, but it is extremely out of place. The thing with Little Legends is that they are very different from anything on the board. They stand out and feel unique. The Jinx Unbound just looks like a unit. Even with all the fancy effects, it just doesn't mesh. I really hope they rethink this type of skin, but hey, only time will tell. Not sure how I feel about Unbound characters, since it really messes with the TFT art style. At the moment, I am leaning more into hating it, but time will tell. What's everyone's deal with time here? The only thing I hate about this set so far is the Unbound Tactician Jinx. This does not match the aesthetics of TFT Tacticians at all. Keep it chibi only. See, I disagree with that. This likely comes from someone who already likes chibis. I say they just need to strike a balance there. The Unbound Tacticians feel rather out of place from the rest of the available options. But as long as these skins are rare and overpriced, whales can fund the game with cool mechanics. New duo augments, last drop board and set mechanic look really good. Looking forward to that. And that is perhaps what we should take away from this. At the end of the day, cosmetics are cosmetics. The game is still free, and the reason why it is free is exactly this. So the main thing that should be taken into consideration is that this just doesn't fit with the art style. As well as, please give us also some other cosmetics that are cheaper. Other than that, time will tell. See, I wanted to make a joke about how at least this skin is not part of a gacha like the League skin, but I think it's way too late for that now.